Hey Harmonizers, welcome to the Maryland Mustang Training Challenge with Timmy and Elon. I'm here with little baby Melina. It was definitely an adventure that started with flying across the border so that way my crew could drive the horses across the border. Because of the interesting COVID regulations, I needed to fly across because I had this little baby with me and she was not considered essential, so we had to fly instead of drive. But it was a gorgeous drive on the way to Maryland. Really, really beautiful, lots of beautiful sights, and ended up here at the horse park. It was my first time going to this challenge, my first time going to this location as well. And we got the horses all settled in. That's Erin, she's part of the crew. And then the boys were pretty happy to get into their stalls at night. That's Timmy with his hay there, and then Elon settled in beside him. So they were pretty happy to get in there. We've got little baby Melina that's having a good little stretch there. She's hanging out in the tack stall, which came in really handy to have a nice little spot to safely put the stroller. And then the boys were beside nice spacious aisles, and the boys were pretty happy to have some comfy stalls. Little Timmy and Elon there. We headed out to do some walks around the grounds, and I had the two boys competing in the challenge. It was really beautiful. They had a lot of vendors there too. So that's Rita and Aaron over there at the pavilion, a whole bunch of shopping. That's the trail course set up in the ring there. And this challenge was probably the best in terms of being supportive and really kind of setting up the horses for success. Even though it was a competition, they let us school over some of the different obstacles that were in the ring. They had a person on standby ready to help if you needed assistance with anything in your pattern. And if a horse was having a hard time, they kind of gave you extra time to make sure that your horse could have a good note. So it was a really well run show. It was really well organized, beautiful grounds. We had lovely weather. Here's a look at the hunter ring in the back. So just kind of showing you some clips of the area there in Maryland. And everything ran on time, which was really nice. Here's another one of the little schooling rings there. And then we competed in the ring on kind of straight ahead and the one to the right as well. We competed in the two top rings. It was pretty fun for them. And then here's the schooling ring. The boys got a chance to kind of run around and kick up their heels a little bit, which they didn't really do a whole lot of running. They mostly kind of walked around and ate grass that was under the side of the rails. We also did a fair bit of hand grazing with them as well, just to let them stretch. They have been in a stall before for chores at home, but they weren't actually used to being in stalls overnight. So we wanted to give them lots of time to stretch their legs, lots of different walks and grazing time, which they definitely appreciated. Little baby Melina hanging out, and Aaron and Rita were a super awesome team to work with. Elon even got to have some body work done by Emily, who I will do a separate video for you guys to go over some of the different things that she did with him. But this was a pretty cool shoulder release that she was doing, where she's kind of getting in behind the shoulder blade and doing a bit of a release in there. Elon seemed to really enjoy it. He was pretty stiff and tight to start with, and then after doing the body work, really started to release and let go. And I'm going to keep up with some of those exercises with him, so he got to have a nice little treatment there doing that, and I think he thought that was pretty nice. He was a little confused at first, but then he figured out that it all felt good. Here's a little look at the boys grazing outside of the barns there where they were hanging out. Lots of grass time for them, that's for sure. Here's a little look at them just hanging out again. That's Aaron and Rita hanging out with the boys. So I'm going to show you guys some of the highlights from their patterns. First up, we had Elon doing his handling class. So this is where there's pylons that mark different movements that you have to do, and you'll have to see what I did with Timmy because I definitely messed that up, even though I went first with Elon. So this was our first pattern at all. So we walk from cone 1 to cone 2, where we stop, and then we are supposed to back up 4 steps, which he does very nicely there. And then we go into the trot to the second cone, where we stop and pick up all 4 feet. So Elon stops pretty nice and straight there. And the judge is sitting in the little booth on the other side. I pick up his foot. He moved a little bit there because he was thinking that I might be asking him to lay down, even though I didn't give him his lay down cue. Picking up his leg is part of how I target him on his spot. And then you can see for the other feet, he stands really nicely. I pick up his feet, I put them back down. So that was a really well done obstacle or task for him. And then from that one, we collect up our rope, and then we're supposed to trot to the next cone and then do a 360 turn. So we do a really nice trot halt. He responds really well. And then here we do our 360 turn, which he does a really good job of keeping his hind end in place, but doesn't fully plant that right hind leg. So it could have been a little bit better, but it was still really, really good. And then here is trot to the last cone and then do a sideways towards us, which he does pretty nicely and smoothly, a little bit lagging his hip, but overall really, really well done. And then for the trailer, this is the last part, was to load your horse on the trailer. And so I go in the trailer and I kind of walk ahead, and then Elon goes to walk in with me, and then the whole thing kind of shakes and makes a bit of a loud noise. He's not used to a noisy trailer. My trailer is brand new and it's aluminum siding. It's got really good suspension. It doesn't make any noise kind of whatsoever as the horses get in. So I guess I needed to practice a little bit more of noisy things, and he did like teeter-totters and stuff that moves, but he found this pretty scary just because when he stepped on it and it kind of shook a little bit, the door to the trailer kind of smashes against the steel side and it makes a pretty loud noise and kind of rattles a little bit. So it's almost like you're going into, I don't know, like a rattle or something, that like a shaking noise. So he thought it was a little scary, and then once he realized it was okay, he went on. So his first part of his pattern was so good, and then this part with the trailer is still only worth 10 marks. Each task is worth 10 points. So he still had an overall really excellent pattern, and he did go on the trailer. It just took him a little bit longer, so definitely did not score as well there. And then here's a look at Timmy doing his handling class. So again, we're going to halt at the first cone, make sure the judge is paying attention, and then we walk to the next cone where we're going to halt and back up our 4 steps. So we're walking along there. Timmy's looking nice and quiet. He's looking pretty good. And then into our backup with our 4 steps, which he does really nicely, his 4 steps. I forgot to hesitate my halt a little bit because we were supposed to halt and have a clear halt and then back up, whereas I just kind of went right into the backup. And then here, it's almost like Timmy's trying to say, Lindsey, you're being an idiot. We're not supposed to do the haunch turn. And he's kind of pushing on me. And really what I was supposed to do was pick up his feet. So I'm walking along and then I'm like, wait a second, there's more pylons than there should be. And I realize, oh shoot, I was supposed to pick up his feet. So I decide that it's probably better if I just go back and pick up the feet, so that way the judge realizes that it's not that I didn't want to pick up his feet. And even though I probably scored really low on this particular task, at least I would get some marks for doing it rather than getting nothing for not doing it at all. And of course he stands really nicely with the ground tie. I noticed both Timmy and Elon tend to stand square, which is really nice. And then of course Timmy loses his focus as I'm coming around to do his last feet, and he walks off, so I just back him up and redo that. So that was definitely not going to score well on that obstacle, between me forgetting it initially and then Timmy walking forward. Definitely not our best moments, but he trots really nicely with me off of the obstacle. And then actually our second pivot turn here is actually significantly better than the first one where he was pushing on me. So it kind of worked to our advantage that I got to do a second 360 turn there. And then here doing our side pass, we come in, we trot nice and straight. We go into our side pass, a little bit lagging on the bum, but pretty smooth in terms of him being responsive to the cues there. And then I come into the trailer. He gives it a little bit of a sniff and then just comes right on. So who would have thought that Timmy would be the one of the 2 Mustangs that would go right on the trailer, because Timmy has been the more skittish one with the obstacles compared to Elon. But Elon apparently scared of noises, and Timmy was like, yeah, whatever, it's not too bad. So I'm just going to show you the last part of the trail pattern. So our second class of the afternoon was our trail pattern, which included going over some trot poles, trotting into our little L-shaped box thing here, and then backing up from one into the other. I tried to get him nice and centered and straight in the middle of the two. He did pretty nicely, a little bit off to the one side, but was really, really responsive to what I was asking him to do, and was really relaxed through the whole process too. So then here, walking over our pole, which he did nice and carefully, and then through the water box, which he's been pretty good at the water boxes. He gives it a tiny little sniff and just basically walks right through. So he did really awesome with that trail pattern. And then here's a look at Timmy in the trail pattern. I'll show you the first part of the trail pattern so you can see something a little different in his clip. So Timmy was a little bit stressed when he came in, which is why he's kind of doing this pushing piece. He tends to need more time to just kind of chill and kind of get relaxed in the situation, and I didn't quite have enough time to just settle him a little bit before we had to start. So he walked to the first cone, trot, and then into our weave, which he gives me a little bit of a toss there too, which is just him wanting to kind of get rid of that adrenaline as he was a bit nervous kind of coming into the ring. So he's not doing anything awful, but that's kind of his way of telling me that he's a little bit stressed. So I just have to kind of be patient and guide him and block a little bit of that as needed. And here doing the side pass over the pole, which he does a little bit crooked. He's not really straight with his hind end there, but goes over the pole no problem. Here's a tiny little bridge that we go over. It's almost like a pedestal. So he walks across that and gets all 4 feet on it, which means that we're going to score well for that. And then here coming into the barrel, where we halt beside the barrel, and there's a brush to brush our horses all over, which he actually stood really, really nicely. I wasn't sure how he was going to stand because he was a little bit nervous coming into the ring and was kind of trying to rub on me and whatnot, which tells me that he's nervous. But by the time I got here, he's standing really nicely. So I show off that I can brush his ears and his face there. And he's standing so perfectly square. He's really, really good at that. So in the end, here's the little look of the group. The boys ended up getting champion overall for Elon and tied for reserve champion for Timmy. And I will share with you guys some more videos separately to focus on each of the boys.